Hello everybody and welcome back to the Showdown finale, and it is John Higgins against Wuiza, and after the opening 9 frames it is John Higgins 4, Wuiza 5, and after a quick break of 2 hours in between the sessions, let's see the players come back onto the arena and let's get the second session started, and may well it be the same one in terms of entertainment that we have seen in the opening session. Though 9 frames that we've had, 4 of them were won by John Higgins and 5 of them course dominated by Wuiza's point of view. Already we've seen 4 century breaks out of those 9 frames, some tactical battles and some of the comeback wins quite late on in the session. Right now, let's get this one started with John Higgins being the player that actually goes for the break-off shot. Now has to try and send the cue ball down towards the lower part of the table from Wuiza's point of view, and well, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see if any of the players is actually going to carry the momentum over the opening session on towards the second one. Because, well, it doesn't seem to be that way, because Wuiza certainly wasn't playing shots like that in the previous session. Wonderful little shot there for him, getting the cue ball perfectly in behind the brown, as if he put it to red, and managed to get a nice little snooker in behind the main ball colour. So Higgins will just see and evaluate the position that he got himself into whilst playing a decent safety shot, you would have thought, on the couple of shots ago. Right now it has to be a 3-cushion approach, you would think, with him trying to get on towards the left-hand side of the back and try and get underneath here. Maybe send the cue ball in towards that zone. And in the end it was a 4-cushion escape. Decent effort. Not quite there though this time around. And it's going to be a foul of 4 points given away to Wuiza. And you'll have a little look to see if he's got anything available in towards the right corner, and ask the referee to put the cue ball exactly where it was. And whilst there's a delay in the game, as I say, there's the head-to-head is very minor in between the two players. It was John Higgins that managed to win the 2 of their encounters by 6 frames to 5 and 6 frames to 4. One of them, of course, was in international championship previously, but that was pretty much 6 years ago. And also, if you talk about the recent finals for John Higgins at the World Grand Prix and World Open, I should say, and the Tour Championship, as he's got for the brilliant little shot there, and second time, certainly not lucky out there. It was perfectly judged with the line of the cue ball and gets himself out of danger for the time being. And Wuiza will just try and send the cue ball away from the main pack and try and have the ball colours and the blue in between the reds and the cue ball right now. And yeah, the thing that you have to say about both of these players is that they have been in the ranking event finals last season, not this season of course, but still quite early doors. But it's not even at the halfway point just yet. If you talk about the English Open and the Scottish Open for Wuiza, like, he was dominated for the majority of the opening sessions by both of these players. And, you know, managed to come back to an extent against Neil Robertson by sort of, I think it was a gap of 8 frames to 2. He managed to overcome to 8 frames to 7 before Robertson eventually managed to grind out the win with a win over the Chinese player with a scoreline of 9 frames to 7. As Wu himself tries to send the Reds back on towards the table. And yeah, into the bunch, I think that was the aim there for him. Gets the cue ball into a nice little D-line for him. And John Higgins is going to try and accelerate the white down the lower part of the table yet again. And try and put some distance in between the Reds and the cue ball. And the current position, actually, in the way sort of all these safety shots have actually shaped it, probably is going to be more of a problem than an advantage to any of the players, because should any of them get the chance, getting the position on the black is going to be a problem, and also for you to try and get on towards majority of these threats is actually going to be a problem, even though they are quite spread out. They're also quite sort of a section in the main way of in between the pink spot, which makes it very much a crowding way of splitting the reds. And of course, with 15 of them, all positioned on the same part of the table, just creates very little room there for you. And I think that applies to safeties as well, with Wuiza now having a look to see if he's going to be able to get through on towards the left-hand side of the table. Probably not on this occasion. And has to try and send the cue ball towards the cushion first. And after achieving 4 points himself on the previous occasion, let's see if he's going to give any of those away to John Higgins. And he won't, but I think he would like to, because the red that he has cannoned in towards, I think he caught it from the wrong side completely. And the same red is going to be playable there for John Higgins in towards the right middle. So, of course, we already guarantees ourselves to see more frames than in the Sean Murphy against Mark Williams encounter. Let's see if we're going to go over the frame amount that we've had in the match of Watchalong against Jack Lesowski. Although, of course, it was a decider. It was first to 9 at that time. So, if we are to go 18 frames or more, of course, the scoreline being 10 frames to 8 or 10 frames to 9 to any one of the players, that's going to be another record that is going to fall down. With us already having a couple of finals that have gone over that limit. Higgins gets himself on the red in towards the right middle, plays it for the blue, but as I've been saying, it's going to be really tough there for him to try and make his way through this position, especially at the early stages, with him trying to get the cue ball lined up for the red in towards the left corner, as one of his first shots, you will think, but he tried to send the red in towards the bunch of reds, the cue ball in towards the bunch of reds, and in the end, I mean, he's played the shot pretty well, because he always had the backup of a shot in towards the left middle, if he run himself completely out of position, and ultimately just having a look to see if he's going to have any of those available in towards the right corner. I mean, he does, but getting through to the cue ball ain't going to be nice for him. So has to make sure that he's going to get this red in. Of course, the position on the blue pretty much is going to be guaranteed there for him if he plays it with the right amount of power. But, you know, it's difficult actually to judge the power that he wants to play this red to make sure that he's going to drop in the pocket. And he hasn't dropped in, so an early chance comes and goes there. So not quite for Wuiza, but certainly for John Higgins right now. And of course, we've seen that in the opening frame of the entire match. And Wu managed to capitalize on that and make a break of 86 points at that time. Of course, it's a very different position that you have to try and deal with, but that's the way to start it. Perfect cue action on the white, and gets the cue ball lined up really nicely there on the top side of the blue. So 1 point in it so far as it stands, and 131 in between the two players to try and split in between each other to see who's going to be the winner of frame number 10. Wouldn't really say that he's entering that sort of zone where it's going to be very important for any one of these players, but I think if you have to put your finger on it, probably he's going to be a bit more important to Wuiza at this stage, because if he goes for a 5-all draw ever since that sort of 5-2 gap that he's had to his name, I think, you know, you could ask about the momentum carrying over from the first session onto the second one, and therefore it's going to be very much against him at that stage. So roll the red in towards the left middle right now, and I mean, the way he's played this shot, he's probably going to be a sign that he's going to have pink playable in towards the left corner, which of course is going to be advantage now for the time being, because I don't think it's going to be respotted back onto its original position. But, you know, eliminating the pink from that zone anyway is going to free up a couple of more reds in towards the corner for him to try and play eventually. So 5 points in between the two players. And Wize at the table. Of course, this is going to be one of those breaks that it's going to take him time in between the shots, because not only does he have to sort of play those shots with that great accuracy, he also has to make sure he nails the positional play on the next colour of red, which so far he has managed to do quite nicely. Getting himself on the red, which, I mean, if it's possible in towards the right corner, that's going to free up his job nicely and just make his life a lot easier and simpler for him to try and move on to the next part of the break. And once again, just having a look to see if he's going to be able to get through to this red in towards the right corner. And I think the answer is no, because he is going to go for the one in towards the left one. And therefore has to still try and cannon the cue ball away into that red and off into the black zone. That's going to be done on the next shot. And I mean, not going to be done on this shot. I would have thought that would have been the plan there for him, but instead he's trying to land on top side of the black. And now gets the most expensive of the colours lined up in towards the right corner. So let's see if he's going to be able to just roll the black in and get himself lined up for the red. Try and play along the black cushion. Going to be very interesting to see if that's going to be the case. Or is he going to try and have the cue ball bounce off into the sort of top part of all of those reds? And I mean, in the end, he's played a shot that was a bit in between. And I don't really think that was the perfect way for him to try and execute the shot. I still think he's going to be lined up on a shot in towards the middle. But A is going to be far from ideal. And B, he's going to have himself compromised on the trying to get position from the blue. And of course, if he wants to force through this shot with a bit of brute force, going to have to make sure that he absolutely nails the passing angle. Otherwise, he's going to be in deep trouble, leaving the position away to Higgins. And, I mean, he's gone for a risky one, but in the end managed to execute it nicely. And gone quite deep into the cue ball to try and line it up for the black in towards the right corner. And now has got a 20-point advantage. And, I mean, barring the fact that he's going to cannon the cue ball in towards the red, I mean, he's going to be re-established himself with a prime position, but as I say, where is his next red coming from? Because the angle that he's got on the cue ball, when he tries to send the black in towards the right corner, it's just going to mean that cue ball inevitably will be very difficult for Wu to try and control to the way that he's going to miss that red. And yeah, in the end, he's tried to cannon into it and get himself lined up for the one in towards the left corner. I mean, he played the shot quite nicely, to be fair, but I just don't think, once again, that it's going to be the end of all of his struggles right now, because still has to make his way through majority of those reds until he clears up the position for it to be called straightforward. But for now, one more red is eliminated. 99 points on the table as it stands, and 28 points is the advantage before this blue is taken in towards the right middle. Plays it nicely, and now finally, for the first probably time in this frame now, gives himself a couple of options to try and choose from. As he's still, by the way, the favourite to claim the title there, by sort of your opinion. As I say, I ain't going to change mine just yet. Well, I ain't going to change it till the end, to be fair, because I think it'll be very boring if I say that Yize is going to take it sort of 10 frames to 6 now, with him leading by potentially 6 frames to 4 if he manages to put this break to bed. Of course, he's entering that sort of 40-point zone, which was quite painful there for him in the frames number 8 and 9. Where he was leading pretty much by the same amount there of points on John Higgins, but didn't manage to convert those points into a frame win on any of those occasions. Let's see if he's going to be able to put that past him. As I say, still no signs of early pressure right now. There were signs of it in the opening session there from Wu's point of view, especially in those 2 frames that I mentioned, but right now it seems to be all calm and composed. Clearly all about business, and eliminates the red in towards the left corner there. Gets himself lined up for the blue in towards the same pocket. And has to try and force the cue ball on towards the black ball cushion and try and bounce back a bit. And, well, preferably wants to be straight on this red to make sure he's going to be able to add a little bit of topspin on it and try and play for the black, which is exactly what he's done. Now gives him a short selection of either playing for the blue or for the black. As I say, just roll through the shot. Don't have to adjust any of this top spin or anything. And I think he's played the shot really well. Once again, wants to have a little bit of the angle on the black now to try and send the cue ball on towards the sort of upper angle of the red. Try and take it in towards the right corner. Maybe he's going to be able to go really deep onto the cue ball and try and set it in towards the little cluster of 2 reds, which is exactly what he's done, and played the shot nicely once again. So, Aaron says, come on, Higgins. Yeah, I mean, Higgins' point of view is going to be disappointing once again that he had a chance there of his own, but he just didn't manage to convert it to anything. You know, he's gone for the red, which I still think you have to go for in the right corner pocket, and him missing that one is going to mean that Yize is going to accelerate off into the break of 58 points as it stands, making that 65 now with the black. And, well, get within touching distance, realistically, of actually winning this frame, because he already has 63 points of advantage. So this red now for the frame to be very much in the sort of in favour of the Chinese player right now. 64 points, and the man from Scotland, of course, has to wait for another chance and wait for another frame to go his way. And ultimately, you have to just say the majority of the finals, unless, of course, it's a massive underdog, don't really tend to go the way of, you know, one player dominates. And, of course, this is going to be the frame number 10, which Wuiza is going to lead on next one, with him taking the gap quite earlier on, and since the match has actually started, so he had to lead by at least a frame out there, has to extend his gap to 2 frames right now, and of course he guarantees that he's going to go on to frame number 11 and 12, still leading, and yeah, it just makes room for margin for Higgins, even sort of less than what he already was going into this session, because even though he's managed to do quite well and recover those 2 frames, which would have been very important there for Wuiza to try and steal off him, in the end, it didn't quite, well, get off to a great start there for him, and now it's a break of 87 points, which Wuiza finds himself on, and has to try and roll the red along the black ball cushion, catches the jaw though, so I don't think the red is going to drop in, and indeed it will stay out, but just like it was in the opening frame, where at that time it was the break of 86 points, this time around it is the break of 87 points, and maybe that's just a little sign that the second session is just going to be a touch better there from Wuiza's point of view, but even if he replicates the opening one, he certainly is going to take it by 5 frames to 4 and make that total scoreline 10 frames to 8 in his favour. Right now, referee will try and make sure those reds and colours are set up perfectly as we head into first break of in between the frames, and 19 minutes since we got started, so once again pretty quick for the final, especially for quite a lengthy opening encounter in the safety battle between the two of them. This time around, of course, it will be Wuiza's chance for a break-off, which he needs to try and execute the same way that John Higgins has done. Don't think we have seen too many of those errors from the players just yet, with him leaving the reds sort of all over the left corner pocket. I think Wu's done that in one of the earlier frames, but still think he's went on to win it, so in the end, got away with that one. But Higgins ain't going to get away with losing another frame, of course, because that gap of 3 frames has been there for him for a couple of occasions. It was 1-4 at some stage and 2 frames to 5 at another stage. And I think the last thing that he'll need right now is going 4-7 down and ultimately just leaving yourself with having to win twice as many frames as your opponent. So we wait for the referee to come back onto the table and give the cue ball to Wuiza for him to get himself started for 11th frame. As yeah, of course, it'll be interesting to see his body language, if it's actually going to change there, or give us any sort of hints that he is feeling the pressure and it's inevitably going to get to him. I think we're going to see that with the game that he plays, because for the majority of the frames, I think that he managed to win, with there being 6 of them right now. He had the starting point not really have been those mistakes from Higgins. You have to say it's just been the lot of long shots that he's been so clinical on, and certainly has managed to build his game around for the majority of this final. Let's see if we're going to have a lot more of them. But of course, it's a nice little bonus when you don't have to work for your chance and you just get it off John Higgins' mistake, as it was on the last occasion. And right now, looking for another frame win, of course. Now Higgins will be looking for another win for the frame of himself, but if he didn't necessarily have to win the previous frame, and it was a bit more important for Wu's point of view to try and break that sequence of Higgins winning 3 frames on the bounce. Right now, Higgins needs this frame. As I say, he can't afford to go 3 frames down once again, because that's just going to be a pattern there you can clearly see, and therefore, if Wu manages to sort of keep that cushion to himself and just get himself closer and closer to getting over the line, eventually, you have to say, Higgins will struggle to get himself another chance to stay in this final as not necessarily the favourite, but just not being demoted to the underdog status. But that's the way to do it. Wonderful little pot there. I was waiting for the cue ball to finish, and it looks like it's finished just straight on the brown in towards the left middle, which I think is going to be fine there for him. He's going to have a couple of reds waiting for him onto the lower part of the table. So, one shot played there by Wuiza. Could have played a better break off, you could argue. In the end, Brown is going to wobble in towards the left middle. Of course, one thing that you have to say about Higgins is he can't afford to miss any of those reds. Pretty much under no circumstances now, with him having a 5 points lead and ultimately trying to get the cue ball around that black ball zone, which I think, from the last time I've seen the table, seems to be pretty much vacant there and doesn't have too many reds around there. Therefore, he's going to be able to get himself nicely with the cue ball, lined up for the black into both left and right corner pocket, and try and build a break consisting of maximum points now there to make sure that he's going to be over the line as soon as possible. But for now, he has to make sure he gets this red in towards the right corner, and that's not going to be the case. He was lined up for the black nicely, and ultimately I think he's going to be quite grateful for the fact that that red hasn't gone available to Wuiza to try and play as an easy invitation as he was in the previous frame. You know, very much a similar miss to the one that we've seen last time out. But of course, that one has seen red stay out over the right corner pocket. This one has jumped out of it and has gone on towards the green spot. Very close towards the bulk line. And yeah, as I say, in the gap in between the brown and green. So you can see there's probably nothing available there for the left corner for Wu to try and play, because Higgins obviously wasn't playing for the red. He was trying to get on the collar from a red himself. So it looks like another safety battle there. So the early chance of an early long pot that we've seen from Higgins doesn't look like it's going to get him anywhere. So Wu now has to try and exploit the chance that presents himself and try and get it onto the lower part of the table. Hello everyone in chat. And yeah, the cue ball has to be sent now towards the ball cushion consecutively by Higgins, because he has to try and get the white in towards the safe zone. Hasn't got too many of those reds available there to his opponent though, but ultimately, as I say, when you try and cannon the cue ball in towards the main pack of reds, you're always going to have at least a couple of them go into the open play, and therefore it just makes the risks a bit higher there for yourself. So it's a decent safety being played by Higgins' point of view, and it now rolls the cue ball in towards the reds from Wuiza's point of view, and played the shot even better, ultimately leaving the cue ball for a very sort of awkward angle there for Higgins, and using a couple of more jaws to his name, trying to accelerate the cue ball off into the distance, and quite close to the yellow spot this time around. Has a little look to see if he's going to be having any of those reds available to try and potentially play a risk-free shot. Once again, we've seen those played by Higgins quite on a few occasions throughout this tournament, and if he just rolls himself on towards the left corner and has black available to himself, he might actually not leave anything out to Wuiza should he be sort of missing that red in towards the left corner. He gets it now for long pots now, thrives on others' mistakes. It's a good point, but from this encounter and from the final, I wouldn't really say that yesterday, and against Murphy, he was really good with the long shots, but the problem is, tell me right now on the tour who is really good on long shots consecutively. Trump was known for it, but this season he's been way below average. Lisowski, you can argue, yes, good point. I mean, the world champion Zhao Xington is not really going to be in that equation now. And I mean, Higgins is playing a risky shot now, so has to make sure he catches the red, and he didn't. I mean, I wanted to say catches it the red not too thin out there, but this is why sometimes you just have to play a shot which not going to get you under threat out there, and this one certainly will. And Higgins is going to give 4 points away to Wuiza because of him missing the red. And ultimately, the most important part is he's going to have this red available in towards the left corner. Of course, it's not the one that he was trying to get a safety from. But anyway, it ain't going to matter massively because there's a clear path for the cue ball to be sent on towards the black. If he wants to use the sort of left-hand side cushion of the table and get himself lined up for the prime spot on towards the black and into the right corner. Play the shot nicely, but wants to have a little bit of the angle on the blue to try and send it towards the right middle. Don't think that's going to be the case for the time being, so may have to settle for a screw back on the cue ball once again and trying to get that one lined up for a shot along the cushion in towards the left corner. Now he seems to have a different idea on his mind, so top's been applied. And, well, pretty much the same outcome, as I say, just putting a little bit of less of a distance in between the cue ball and the red, but ultimately, I mean, he run himself way too close to the cushion, and right now, it's going to, all of a sudden, become a really difficult pot there for him into the left corner. When player gets older, long shots get less. That's exactly the point that I was getting. I mean, I was going to bring the sort of class of 92 into play, but then I thought, you know, you don't have to go just with those ones. You can talk about sort of Robertson refusing way too more of those long shots, and when he ain't, seems to miss them. And talk about misses, I mean, Wuiza refusing to go for the red along the cushion. In the end, tries to play a little plant in towards the right corner. And right now, it is going to be John Higgins that has got a red available to himself in towards the right middle, which I actually am not too sure that he's actually going to take on and not play a safety shot off. And in the end, he's tried to get the cue ball in towards the green. Of course, the prime task would have been try and get the cue ball in behind the green, which is currently the only colour, quite far away from his spot. But still managed to play a decent safety shot out there. And yeah, as I say, that number is going to be pretty much sort of limitless for you. You've got O'Sullivan, you've got Williams, you've got Trump, you've got Higgins, certainly. And that's why I think the likes of Si Jiaowei, Wuiza, Zhao Xingtong, to be fair, never really been too strong at long shots. And talk about being strong on them, Wuiza makes another mistake there. I mean, he clearly didn't see any better option there to his name than trying to play for a red, which would have left Higgins on with something anyway. In the end, he's going to have the same red available to try and play in towards the left corner. So Higgins now will make his mind up on whether he wants to try and send the cue ball for a rest shot and try and get that one lined up for the shot of the black in towards the right corner. And well, Murphy probably is going to be my shout for the long shots, if you have to say consistently over the course of the season. The thing with Murphy, when he comes to hit a long shot, I always expect him to make it. And I think that's the only player that is on the tour. Apart from, well, right now, like I say, he's going to be on a match-by-match basis. Like right now, if Wuiza hits a long shot, which I think is in a good position, I think he will pot it, but I'm not really going to say that throughout the majority of his career, because he's been missing a lot of those against Trump, certainly against Hawkins, and a couple of them against Zhao Xingtong yesterday as well. And I think the most consistent one, as I say, my shout is going to have to go to Sean Murphy on this one. And I think there's one more player that was going to give a shout out to on this one that seems to go off. Well, Jack. Yeah, Jack Lisowski's obvious shout as well. But, he's gone. I think for the percentage of the shots that he goes for, as Higgins cannons the red in towards the cushion and plays the shot quite nicely out there, to be fair. Gets himself 3 points clear and now tries to get away with this one. Get himself lined up for the shot in towards the left middle there if he wants to go for the blue. And in the end, he clearly felt like there was a path for the pink to try and be sent in towards the right corner. So nice little shot there. As I say, ideally, you don't really want to see Higgins playing those frames the way he does, because finally you want to at least see him sort of level the score up. And ideally for himself, of course, try and get the edge over Wuiza in terms of him applying all the pressure on his opponent and actually trying to run away with it. Higgins has allowed Wuiza to go too far ahead. This is exactly what I'm saying. I don't think it's too far. As I say, I think it's 7-4. That's probably going to be a bit of a game over there for yourself. But that's why this frame turns into such an important one. Because you have to make sure when he's close to the finish line, there's going to be pressure. So if you're going to stay behind for the majority of the match, just make sure you're not behind by sort of 5 or 6 frames, which, look what happened to Zhao Xingtong yesterday in the semi-final against Wuiza. He was 8-4 down, and he managed to play quite well for the couple of frames, and then the only chance that Wuiza needed to get himself into the final was taken, and therefore, the 2 frames that Zhao Xingtong managed to win didn't really mean anything because he wasn't close enough to him. So, if he was 8-6 down, all of a sudden you bring that to 8-all potentially, if it's going to be played in the same way, and you get yourself into a decider, and then it's anyone's game for the taking. I guess the result, as I say, I ain't going to change my mind just yet. 10-7 for Higgins was the one that I said in the morning, and I'm going to stick to it for now. Wu Yongman in big final, understandably, will be nervous. He will be, but I don't think we're at that stage just yet. As I say, I think it wasn't really nerves that he was trying to do. I think he's trying to do too many things at once sitting there. I mean, Higgins, by the way, taking a long time on this red, which does seem to be a very straightforward one, in towards the right corner to play along the cushion. So clearly, doesn't seem to be too happy with something. And, he gets himself very straight on the black, so clearly was thinking about trying to send the cue ball in towards the next couple of reds, with him now having a gap of 11 points to his name. Still 107 on the table as it stands. And send the red in towards the left middle is going to be an option there for him. And try and get that one lined up for the potential chance there. and played the shot pretty well. As I say, the camera hasn't just said to me that the red has gone onto the top part of the table, which you can see from another angle. And in the end, it's still a shot in towards the left middle. Of course, it's not the way that I said that I thought he was going to play the shot, because of it being just, when you play the shot with such power, it just makes the black missable and just gives you limited control over the way the reds are actually going to spread out. But he's played the shot perfectly and now gets himself, as long as he manages to get the red in, and gets himself into a perfect chance to take this frame away from Wuiza and make it the one that counts for him. 19 points is the difference in between the two of them already as we approach the very much the climax point of frame number 2 of the second session. And like I say, he's more likely to be nervous, Wu, if he is going to be leading by 6 frames to 5 and not 7 frames to 4. Because if you're nervous with 1 frame and your opponent gets to the table and clears up, 120 points of a clearance, you're going to have pretty much 15 minutes to tell yourself, you know what, I'm not here to be nervous, I'm here to play. So next time, I'm going to hit my chances, I'm going to be focused, I'm going to be composed, and I'm going to try and produce my chances. And the more times you leave your opponent a chance to win that frame, the more, for me personally, the more of a favourite you become to win the next frame. Because in snooker, unless you're going to have an absolute outstanding circumstances, like it happens, twice or 3 times in a season, especially in the final, when you're going to have a whitewash, every single time a person wins it, barring, yes, he's got form, but he is likely to lose the next frame, simply for the reason of, if his opponent wasn't getting the chance on frame number 2 and 3, he's more likely to get the chance in frame number 4. But as I say, that's been my observations for the majority of the time, and I just think that that case is a valid point. Once again, there, Higgins hasn't been the fan of these reds, that he has to take along the cushion with the rest, and has to roll the cue ball on towards the black once again. I mean, if he manages to stun it, which I think is going to be quite an ask there for him to try and actually stretch for that red. And he's managed to get the cue ball, hold on for the black, and setting in towards the left corner on this time around. Now gets himself lined up for the black, as I say, to go 40 points clear of Wuiza and try and accelerate the cue ball away into the main bunch of reds. I think it's going to get him into a perfect position to try and accelerate away here. In terms of, he's got 6 reds available to him, at least, if you're not counting the one which is quite close by the green pocket. And, try and roll the cue ball in towards that red and play the shot nicely. So, gets himself lined up for the red in towards the right corner. Now, 40 points clear, 83 points on the table. So, more than halfway there already. And I think next 3 reds is certainly going to get him over the line. Next two reds, I should say, because with him getting a 16 points of a break if he plays both of these two with the black, I think he's going to get him over the line with only 59 of those on the table. But certainly, he's done majority of the hard work quite earlier on there, which, has to be very much synchronized with the way that Wuiza has been playing this match up to this point. And right now, for him to try and go 48 points clear, I think he's going to try and go for the red along the black ball cushion to be played, which is quite close towards the right corner, and things against it. And in the end, he's gone for the shot that he had to play with great precision. I think he's played it pretty well. Now going to have himself lined up in towards the left corner. So now try and accelerate the cue ball in towards the top part of the table, get himself lined up for the ball colours this time around, and try and have that one lined up for the brown. Of course, as I say, if he runs himself a bit too straight or sending the cue ball in towards the ball cushion, he always has the option of playing that red, which is currently sitting onto the top part of the table. But, the way he's played the shot, he's landed exactly in between the brown and green, which the green is closer to the ball cushion, but ultimately he's got the cue ball quite far away from that one. And now the gap of 49 points with 67 still being on the playing table. I just think he can go against him still at this stage. I wouldn't really say that he has got any of those colours or reds safe at this stage of the frame. So I have to try and make sure. If he gets the brown in, he's going to be out of trouble. But if he doesn't get it in, which he hasn't, he's going to be in all sorts of trouble, you would think. And the way he's played the shot, and yeah, the brown still has gone pretty much back on his spot out there. And yeah, it's a waste from John Higgins because they're heading towards the left middle, which I think would have been the aim there for Higgins himself. He's going to be playable by Wuiza. And as I say, I can't really see any of those reds that are actually going to be a lot of an issue there for himself. So has to try and cannon the cue ball in towards that red, but has to make this one in. Those are the pressure shots because there's a lot of distance in between the two of those, sort of the cue ball and the red, and makes it perfectly. I mean, as I say, 59 points on the table, so certainly not going to struggle in terms of getting all the points that he needs to win the frame. And, well, 7-4 is going to be an awful lot of a gap there in terms of frames in between the two players for Higgins to try and overcome. So, just makes it even more of an important for this frame. And, yeah, played the shot not too well there. I think he's going to be very straight on this red. Wants to have a little bit of the angle, but once again, doesn't show any sign of concern. Higgins rarely responds with less than 80% chance. Peter, well, I would disagree on that, as I say, from my observation point. But today, I think it's going to be way less than that. Let's see if he's going to be able to handle this one, though. And he hasn't. So Higgins, even though he was missing those spots with less than 80% chance, he's still going to come back to the table. Brilliant replay, by the way, showing the red that was missed. Now, let's see if this same red is going to be possible for Higgins to try and get it towards the left corner. Once again, as I say, that was completely self-inflicted there from sort of Wood, because nobody asked him to try and take that red along the cushion with him being straight on there. And I just think that's going to put him under all sorts of scrutiny right now, because he's still 42 points down, with 59 on the table. So, I mean, he can get himself back in this frame. But as I say, he's very lucky not to leave the same red away to John Higgins. You could argue that, you know, Higgins was lucky not to leave the brown, but of course Wuiza wasn't going for the brown. He was going for the red, which Higgins has left him on with anyway, after missing the brownie towards the yellow pocket. And I think from the general observations point of view, you have to say that today, his problem has been missing quite a few shots with, I wouldn't say 80% chance, but 60 or 70, 65% I think is fair. And Yize has been making the majority of them. And that's why the scoreline is the way it is right now. The marginal gain on Yize's perspective, if of course this frame is to go Higgins' way, which does seem to be quite likely right now, with it still being a 50-50 of a safety battle. Higgins putting one red at least on towards the cushion to ensure he's going to have some sort of backup if he is to lose the safety battle. And yeah, I mean, he's going to try and go for the shot approach, which I thought was possible there to him, but I don't think he's played it in the way that, you know, was the best possible scenario, because he tried to cannon the red in towards the cushion, so he had already one of them out there, and he's tried to the second one, and in the end, he's left the red on for the yellow pocket for Yize to try and take on, and this could be a lot of trouble there for himself, because I am very surprised from his point of view that he was sort of happy to leave this red available, because I would be also very surprised if Wood doesn't actually make this one in, and he will. Very bizarre shot selection from Higgins, and the fact that he was happy to leave this red in towards the yellow pocket. And I mean, as I say, if Wood misses that shot, realistically, that's the only red that he can actually give away there to him. So, I mean, if he was literally looking to try and give him the position away, and saying, you know what, you're going to have this chance, but you're going to have two reds very close towards the cushion. Well, I wouldn't really say he's learned the lesson of the previous 10 frames, where Wuiza could have actually won a lot more than 6 on the previous occasion, but ultimately he still finds himself ahead, and I wouldn't really be surprised if he manages to clear up from this position. I still think it's unlikely with the way those two reds are placed, but you shouldn't be taking that sort of gamble if you are John Higgins, because you know, you can't really win from it. Even though, you know, even if he missed the red in towards the sort of yellow pocket, I don't think he would have left Higgins on with anything, which would have got him over the line. I mean, in the end, it does look like it's going to work out, because the cannon off the brown, which was attempting, is going to have the cue ball skid off those two reds, and in the end, not going to do a lot of damage there to Higgins. So Wood just pushes the red towards the left-hand cushion and cannons the cue ball in towards the green to put it a bit further down towards the ball cushion. Now, 43 points is the advantage of John Higgins, 43 on the table. So realistically, only thing that Higgins needs is going to be a red and a colour. But right now, I think he finds himself snookered. Has to try and send the cue ball on towards the black ball cushion and try and cannon the red in towards the left-hand corner. Playing the shot really nicely, to be fair, because I actually don't think he's left a double on in towards the right middle. Available for Wuiza right now. And has to try and accelerate the white in towards those reds and get the one lined up in towards the right middle if it is on for a double. And decent effort, played it well and got himself another chance now. I mean, it was a nice shot from Higgins' point of view. As I say, I wouldn't really criticise him for that one. But it could be absolutely down to nothing if Wuiza manages to get himself on this red. As I say, the green being out of position is going to be an issue, but it's certainly not the one that will actually make me say I think Wuiza is going to lose the frame because of that. I think the main ask has to be try and get in behind the red after he manages to bot the black, and he's managed to do that perfectly out there. I think he's very straight on it, which is going to be fine at this stage, with him just trying to play the cue ball through the red and get himself lined up for a shot at the black. Right now, another very important shot coming up, because if he wants to play that green along the sort of ball cushion, he needs to make sure he's going to be on the wrong side of the yellow to try and put it towards the ball cushion itself. And that's exactly what he was checking right there. So another important shot with him being 23 points down. And of course, as I say, it's not really going to matter now at this stage if he gets himself on the yellow. And I mean, he is a very, very lucky man there, because he could have had himself snookered in behind the blue. I mean, we played the shot with a light trajectory line, but in the end, it just seems like, you know, the cue ball power got away from him there, and he managed to cannon the blue out of the way with the last gasp, and was trying to play through the yellow. In the end, he hasn't played the shot too well either, and this is now the sort of opportunity that you feel like very much reminds you of that semi-final match against Zhao Xington, where Xington could have sort of went for the similar type of a shot on the brown to try and go 5-4 up there with the rest. Missed that one, and the rest is history, with Wuiza winning 4 frames on the bounce. This could be another turning point, with Higgins needing a couple of those already. As I say, you only need the green and brown to his name. Wuiza needs all of these 5 colours, but first he has to try and roll the green in towards his own pocket along the black ball cushion. And played it really nicely along the ball cushion, I should say, and played it really, really nicely. Talking about calmness under pressure, I don't think there's going to be a lot of pressure now, and if there is, he's just showing you the way he can deal with it. There have been early signs in the sort of one of the opening shots of the second session, and certainly have been a lot more signs of them in frames number 8 and 9, but ultimately Wuiza is here to play, and he's all about business as it stands, with him being just a couple of shots away from making it a 7-4 of a gap. Not in favour of John Higgins, which of course comes against all sort of odds there that you could have possibly imagined. Right now it is going to be to try and hammer the sort of both pink and black in towards the left corner. Gets himself on the black first, and nice little shot on the pink. And ultimately it is Wuiza, and his substantial lead of 7 frames to 4. John Higgins is going to struggle now to get himself back in this match. And what a pot that was along the ball cushion in towards the green pocket. Lovely little stuff there from Wuiza's point of view, and he now gets himself a 3-frame cushion, just like it was after frame number 5 and frame number 7. That time it was 4 frames to 1, 5 frames to 2, but this time around he's only 3 frames away from claiming his maiden ranking event title. And what a player, and what a way to do it against John Higgins, one of the best the snooker game has ever seen. A multiple-time world champion doesn't seem to find the answers right now for the impeccable game that Wuiza has managed to produce so far, as he leads by 7 frames to 4. Wouldn't really say it's game over just yet, because you are talking about John Higgins. If it was the other way around, you probably have to say that, but if you talk about Wuiza and his sort of Lipe Fan and Neil Robertson clashes last year, you have to bring into play the sort of match of John Higgins against Mark Selby. Remember, in the Tour Championship, I think it was. He was 5-8 down, and he's now 4-7 down. So pretty much the same sort of scenario. And that, of course, was another multiple-time world champ, 4-time world champion, Mark Selby. You know, I just think he's going to be able to come back into this match. But of course, I've got absolutely no clue the way Selby was playing in that sort of finale. He's unlikely to have been playing badly, simply for the reason of, you know, him still having a wonderful gap of 5 frames to 8 in favour of Mark Selby at that time. But, I mean, if Higgins managed to do it on that day, I don't think something dramatic is going to change in 7 months' time. And right now, it is going to have to change there from Higgins' point of view, because Wuiza, I mean, by the way, if you talk about any signs of pressure, you have to bring the red that he's played along the cushion towards the right corner into play. But also, I mean, he managed to redeem himself. Arguably, that red that he played along the cushion was probably an easier shot for him to play and get himself one with a bit of a difficult angle on the black than the one that he's managed to roll the green in towards the green pocket. And, well, right now it's going to be a very much needed reaction from John Higgins' point of view as he tries to get himself into a position which is not going to see him lose sort of 3 frames on the bounce right now, because remember, he was trying to do that to Wuiza, win 3 frames on the bounce and carry that form over from session number 1. Instead, it was Wuiza winning the frame number 10 and 11 right now to get the last 4 frames being shared in between the 2 players. So pretty much nothing has changed since the gap of 5 frames to 2. Instead, sort of in case that Wuiza wins this one, he is going to be 4 frames ahead for the first time, of course, in this encounter. And, well, technically, it is going to be the closest that he's actually ever been already to the ranking event final, with him not leading Neil Robertson or Lee Pei-Fan for the majority of those matches. Of course, neither of those frames were actually have actually put him in the lead against Neil Robertson. As now Higgins tries to go for the red in towards the right corner and send the cue ball in towards sort of left-hand side of the table and try and make sure he's going to have a bulk line and the ball colors in between the cue ball and the target reds. But, I mean, Higgins is struggling and you don't really need a confirmation to see that. But I just think maybe he struggled and actually fueled by the fact that he sees the opponent play so well. It could be demoralizing. You know, you can talk about the pressure all you want, but when you're not playing well and your opponent is playing brilliantly, it just could be one of those days for you to not to, when, you know, your game is not at your best and maybe it's just not meant to be there for you, because last thing that you want to do is give up. But one more red available now. He's trying to take very straight, so has to cue this one perfectly. But once again, as he steps up to the table, you don't really have a confidence that he's actually going to miss this one. And there you have it. Brilliant shot in towards the left corner. Queued up perfectly for the black to be set up for the one into the right corner. Put 50 pounds on John next. If you think about this one, you're in trouble, because with the way that Wu has been playing on the previous 2 frames and the majority of the sort of 11 frames that we already have finished in this final, I just think it is possible, but he needs to have a massive mistake first, because he's going to have, what is it going to be, 5 reds available on top of the one that he's already managed to pot. So, you know, 6 of them, if you play them with black, it's 56 points. And it's already going to be a massive mountain there for Higgins to try and climb back. Was a champion, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I wouldn't really say that Higgins is going to win the next frame, but I wouldn't really put it over John Higgins if he is to sort of lose the match now by 10 frames to 4. Of course, it's possible. And remember, the blueprint was there yesterday. Not yesterday, the day before, because the semi-finals were played on a Friday for Wiese and Zhao when he was 4 frames each, and Wiese managed to take it into an 8-4 of an advantage there for him against Zhao. And on the 3rd time of asking, managed to get himself over the line and win that encounter by 9 frames to 6. As Wiese won the match because this tournament live in China, and Wiese are the great playing in this session. Well, Jazzy, as I say, don't get yourself over the line just yet and don't push the horses. I'm thinking he has to try and finish this frame first to get himself an 8-4 of a lead, and then he's got 2 more frames for him to try and get over the line. As I say, I've seen those gaps overturned in the finals. Not necessarily sort of seen Wuiza participating in all of them, to be fair, of course. But I have seen John Higgins being on the sort of sending things out, the receiving end of things, because he's capable of producing a magnificent performance and just feeding off the struggles of his opponent. But the problem is, I mean, you talk about struggles, doesn't seem to be an awful lot of them. There's another beautiful shot there off the black. Has Wuiza free up a couple of more reds to his name. Confirmed century break, maybe 147. I mean, for now, he's going, I think, pretty well with 5 reds, 4 blacks. Sort of 5 reds, 5 blacks now. So he's sort of 25% there. But as I say, the last thing that he'll focus on is a 147 unless it gets to a really late stage. And then you can try and talk about it. But, I mean, if you are talking about it from the neutral's point of view, of course, he's not going to hear me, so it's not going to matter. It's a nice position for a 147, but I've seen those positions turned down for the safety play, simply for the reason of players, they don't really want to risk losing the frame or losing a century break for something that is going to happen once in a lifetime. But I think it's a bit of a contradiction in itself, because if it's going to be once in a lifetime, surely you can sacrifice a century break, certainly. Not so much a frame win, of course, especially with it being so late into the final. And puts another beautiful red in towards the left corner. But for now, as I say, he sticks to his plan, and it is going to be 5 reds, 6 reds, I should say, and 6 blacks. Gets himself lined up for the shot in towards the left middle. Very straight on that one as well. And he's going to have the path for the cue ball very much clear ahead of himself to try and get it lined up for the black once again in towards the left corner. And a bit underrun for this one, though. As I say, still not over the line. He has to be sort of realizing where in this frame and where in the match he's actually finding himself. It's going to be the first time that, I don't think he actually would have imagined the situation yesterday, but it's the first time that he finds himself in this situation. So he has to make sure he behaves the right way. And behaving the right way is certainly getting those tricky blacks in towards the left corner, which he's managed to do on that occasion. And one more thing for a 147 is he's going to have to try and send the cue ball off from the black in towards the main bunch of reds, which at this stage doesn't seem very likely that he's going to have himself lined up on the red and also have a straightforward way of playing off onto the next black, which of course is the requirement for a 147. And one thing for sure, don't ever write Higgins off, even if he's down 4 or 5. Yeah, as I say, I just think he becomes less and less likely for him. And talk about likely and unlucky on this stage, because had he had a red in towards the right corner, he could have been, and the first time I was actually going to say it, it could have been a 147 there for him. I think he's going to back out of this one. I mean, the red technically gets him over the line in this frame for an 8-4 of a lead. So maybe just try and send it. I mean, if he makes it 147 in the final, it is over for Higgins. I'll just tell you that for free. You can be 4 or 5 frames down, but when your opponent from China in the Chinese International Championship makes a 147 in a stage of a frame for him to go 8-4 up, which he will do inevitably, gets himself lined up for the black, but once again needs a little bit of a look to get himself lined up for the red. And you can see a little bit of frustration, not too much of it, so he wasn't slapping the table the way sort of Carter or Sullivan would. Still gets himself into a position where he can pot the red. But realistically, unless he wants to have the cue ball sent 2 lengths of the table, so onto the ball cushion and back, is going to be a very tough of a challenge for him to try and get the cue ball lined up for the black to be played in towards the left or right corner. But of course it's possible. I think he is considering to go for the double. It's a decent effort and just about misses that one. So it could have been a 147. Unfortunately, of course, for the perfect fairy tale story for Wuiza, it's not going to be one, but ultimately, certainly is going to be an 80 points of a gap. That is going to get him over the line in one more frame. And what was I talking about? Charlesington against Wuiza. 4 frames on the bounce. He managed to take it 3 now. And ultimately now leads John Higgins by 8 frames to 4. And never write Higgins off, as I said previously, but one more frame and you probably can write him off. Because with the way he's been playing, I can't see him winning 6 frames on the bounce. I can't really see him winning 6 frames on 7, which is the requirement now. All red clear to spot. Yes, they are, but as I say, there's one thing about 147 which is going to be the ultimate difficulty for you when you play a computer game, is the fact that even if you've got all 15 reds available, A, any minor mistake is going to cost you the 147 because you run yourself a bit wide on the red, and all of a sudden you either miss the pot or you get yourself not on the black or in any other corner. But also, if you get yourself in a nice position on the red and you can see the clear path for the blue, you know that if you are aiming for a 147, you can't go for it. So therefore, you have to make sure that your position on the red always has to be ideal, with the sort of the thought back in your mind that you have to try and send the cue ball on for the black to be played on the next shot of asking. So you can have 15 reds, you can have 15 blacks all ready for you in the potted, but one mistake and it's over. And when the pressure and stakes are that high, you're always going to make that sort of marginal error. I wouldn't really say he's done anything wrong, by the way, because he still had a very difficult position. Another point that I actually forgot to mention was, when you've got the position like he had, like Wu had, sorry, I don't know why I called him he for the second time of asking, when he had 80 points, which, you know, he scored without really sort of disturbing the play of reds, but he couldn't get further than that. Therefore, he had to send the cue ball in towards the reds. And how are you going to do that from the black to make sure that your next red is going to be played with a black as well? You can always bring it into blue when you're not on the 147. So get your cue ball lined up on the top part of the blue and try and send it into the bunch of reds. And maybe you're going to have yourself lined up on the black on the next occasion as well. Wuiza to break off, by the way. 13th frame to get started. But you're not going to have an easy way of getting on the black to try and cannon the cue ball in towards the red. Have yourself sort of perfect selection of reds and then still be able to recover for the black and resume the play like nothing ever happened. It just doesn't work that way. And that's why the likes of Ronnie O'Sullivan haven't made a maximum break for sort of 7 years in the making, since English Open against Alan Taylor, until that Saudi Arabia Masters semi-final where he had 2 in the same match against Chris Wakelin. Because as much as it is all about skill, there's also a point of luck to it. Let's see if Higgins is going to go for this red now. It could be the signs that, you know, he's sort of going for all or nothing shots. And he is, as I say, when you talk about never write Higgins off the match, you could also say that right now he's the favourite to lose the final by 10 frames to 4. And that's what I would say. Because if I was to if I had a choice of any scoreline to be predicted and I had to get one right, absolutely, I would go for 10-4 right now, because he's going for all the shots which he clearly feels like he has to make, otherwise he's going to be in trouble. But because he's not playing well, one thing comes into another, he's going to be missing those shots, and therefore gifting the same ones to Wuiza as he gets himself on the green nicely after potting a red. Remember, there's going to be an intermission of 15 minutes after this one, and I'm pretty sure Wuiza didn't really want that to be the case. But of course, with him losing the last two frames yet of the first session, he was always going to have an intermission. And I think, as I say, in the break of in between the two sessions, I don't actually think that you've been dreaming about trying to have that 9-4 of a lead to himself. As Wu has to stretch for this red to try and take it in towards the right corner. Has to play with little power to make sure he's going to cannon the cue ball off the red and in towards the black there to be lined up. And yeah, I think not really going to be too harsh on him here. I think he was trying to go for the right shot, trying to get the cue ball in towards the red with little power, because otherwise he was going to run himself out of position on the colour. But ultimately, he's going to give another chance away to John Higgins. Whether he's going to take it or not is a big question. But like I said, this time around, he has to make sure all of the chances that he gets like that are eliminated into a break of 70 points plus there to his name. Starts off with potting a red, gets himself onto the black, and this time around has got 3 or 4 reds available to his name to try and get those in towards left and right corner of the table. So Higgins is trying to see if he's going to be able to go for this black in towards the left corner, get himself lined up for a shot off the red in towards the opposite side of the table, and ultimately, I mean, he's going to try and consider taking the pink out of the game for it to be at least to be respotted, because if he's going to try and cannon the reds off the blue, they're going to go, the cue ball is going to go into the pink first, and with it being quite a significant amount of distance in between the reds and the pink, I just think that could go horribly wrong for Higgins as well. But first thing first, you have to get yourself a little bit of traction and try and get some momentum started your way. Can't see Higgins coming back now, neither can I. The Lawrence logs absolutely can't, but as I say, that's the definition of against the odds, when you can't see him coming back. And time and time again, he's managed to produce those brilliant performances, which actually got him into all sorts of trouble. But also remember that he was up against sort of Mark Selby, which didn't have the best season. I'm not by any means, by any stretch of imagination, trying to sort of understate his achievement. He's the legend of the game, and he had a really nice season last year. But he was up against Joe O'Connor, which you wouldn't really expect to meet in the ranking event final. And he was against Mark Selby, that didn't have the best sort of season last year. It was still a remarkable campaign on each of those two occasions, but I think when you come up against someone like Wuiza, that has been playing the snooker of his life, arguably, you're going to struggle inevitably, and that has been the case from Higgins' point of view. And now, with him finding himself 4 frames behind, he has to try and make sure every single chance that presents himself, it is going to be, well, he's going to have to be taken there by Higgins, as he's now 20 points away in this frame. And having 2 more reds available to himself, I think both of them are going to be eliminated in towards the left corner. Wuiza, you are the champion. As I say, don't push the horses just yet, and try and hesitate for a couple of more frames. If he gets himself into a 9-4 lead, I might actually start to saying that myself, but not quite yet. And of course, also you're up against one of the very best players of the game, the world number 6, for snooker's sake. Now, 28 points is the gap in between the two players. 1 more red available for Higgins, and realistically, I think he wants to go really deep onto the cue ball, but as I say, the fact that he hasn't taken the pink and taken my advice to try and take it in towards either left or right corner is probably going to be a sign that if he has to play the shot off the blue, he's going to be in trouble. In the end, he's gone for the black shot, but I'm not really going to change my mind and say that's going to get him out of trouble. He's got, what is it now? 9 reds to try and send the cue ball in towards. And I'll be honest with you, I'll say before he plays the shot, I don't really see him ending up on any of them. And he's missed the black. I mean, ooh, that is the worst possible timing. Has the black gone in the way of the red, though? I think he has. So Wiese not necessarily having anything to his name, but of course, when you miss the black off the spot like that, it's not really going to inspire you to have a comeback of 4 frames overturned in the final against Wuiza. But as I say, a great benefit for Higgins' point of view is going to be the fact that he can try and get the cue ball off into the sort of top part of the area and have a safety battle of his own, instead of just giving an early chance away to Wiese. And you can always take that, you know, from, if you have a little switch in your head, you can always say, oh, you know, I managed to get the black, but I just didn't get on any of the reds, and now I'll have to go through a safety battle with 29 points advantage to my name. But ultimately, when he's going to realise that he's lost previous sort of 3 frames on the bounce, it's going to be quite difficult for him to pull that switch. But that's the way to do it. Brilliant long shot there from Higgins, and he gets himself lined up perfectly on towards a brown, yellow or green to have a choice from. And ultimately, if he is going to go for those reds, which, you know, I would classify as very risky, he has to make majority of them, and certainly did that on that time of asking. And as I say, just put that behind you and say, you know what, I got myself on the brown, try and get the cue ball down the table. Of course, I'm probably once again, I'm going to struggle to win the frame in this visit to the table. But if I don't have my opponent playing at it, certainly have no chance of losing the frame. And Higgins is here to play. He's gone for an absolute Stephen Maguire shot. Ronnie O'Sullivan and Neil Robertson of trying to send the cue ball in towards a bunch of reds and say, if I'm not going to have those spread out, I'm probably going to give the turn back to my opponent. But certainly has managed to do that on this time of asking. Gets himself off into the red to try and take it in towards the left corner. And once again out there, of course, he's going to find himself losing this mini session anyway, with it going so quickly. You know, I mean, like, it's been an hour since it started, but it barely feels like it's been 15 minutes in these 3.5 frames being played. Now has to try and finish the job here, because as I say, 5-8 is still a scoreline that you can come back from. 4-9, not necessarily. And I don't think he's played the shot, the good shot here either. Gets himself lined up for the ready towards the left middle, as probably his only option there. But with the black not being on its spot and not waiting there for Higgins, it's going to be quite a challenge for him to get the cue ball on towards those colours. I think we'll have teary eyes, either lose or win. Well, I mean, absolutely no problem with that. I think that's what it's all about, the emotions of the sport. And as I say, if Yize is to be the winner, congratulations to him. One of the best stories of the season. As I said when he was playing in a sort of semi-final, I'm not going to change my mind. It is going to be more of a fairy tale than it has been for Jack Lisowski's point of view, because Abel is younger. No disrespect to Jack once again, but the opposition that he had to go through. I know Lisowski had to go through the likes of Selby, Chomp in the final, and Joey Long sort of in the semis, but I still think when Wuiza had to play Chomp, Hawkins, Anda, Zhang Anda, I should say, and sort of Zhao Xingdong and John Higgins right now, if he is to find those two more frames, which he's going to be seeking for desperately. I think he's going to overshadow that performance of Jack at the Home Nation Series. But ultimately, as I say, you don't really have to sort of say, or argue whose title has been better. They both have been great. The story of Jack has absolutely been magnificent, and certainly has made quite a few people have teary eyes. And I think it's going to be the same here with Wuiza if he is to become the champion here, of course, on his home soil. And for his World Championship, of course, to come against the man. As I say, I think it's a bit too early to say that, so let's focus on the red in towards the right corner, which Higgins tries to play with the rest. Gets himself lined up for the black, and ultimately now, certainly within touching distance of finishing this performance now against Wuiza in this frame, of course, and get himself into the intermission, still being alive there. And just like I mentioned previously, it is going to be the same scoreline that he managed to overturn against Mark Selby in the sort of Tour Championship last year in April. Well, this year, but last season in April, where he managed to pull that one to a win of 10 frames to 8 out there, so winning 5 frames on the bounce. Of course, with him winning this one, if he needs to repeat that story, it is going to be 6 frames on the bounce against Wuiza. And I think Higgins, he's not playing too well, and the sign with it, and by the way, I think someone did have Wuiza to win this frame. I'm not sure if that was the previous one. So 68 points is now the advantage for John Higgins, so he's going to go for a cut double and a little bit of a treble out there, but I think in the end, he is going to change his way, and he is going to go for an intermission break. It is now John Higgins 5, Wuiza 8. The Chinese player is still very much the dominant force, but the Wizard of the Wishaw is not over. He's not done with this match quite yet. As we return to the action in 15 minutes time, feel free to check out on who is going to lift the wonderful trophy here at an international championship, because for the time being, it does look like it is going to be the Chinese player for the 3rd year in a row, after Zhang Anda and Ding Zhuyi managed to do that in 2023 and 2024. Stay tuned in, and we'll be back to sort of 55 minutes past for more action of Wuiza against John Higgins. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, the intermission is now over and the players are making their way back onto the arena, and it is John Higgins' break-off shot that he can try and convert into another frame win, which he will be desperately seeking right now, with him still being the underdog now coming into the deciding and the endgame part of this match. And wouldn't count Higgins out just yet. Experience is crucial for Higgins, who just has to keep it in his seat. Would love to see Wu over the line there, though. He's been phenomenal this week. Exile, absolutely true. And he's got the first real chance now after the break-off shot not being too precise from Higgins to take the red in towards the right corner and play the shot beautifully out there. Gets there in comfortably, and still he's perfectly lined up for the black to take it in towards the right corner. And as I say, I haven't really got a horse in the race, but I think from whatever sort of point you look at it, is it going to be either Higgins taking on a brilliant win in his 50s and making the first play in the history of Snooker of actually making the ranking event win in 4 different decades, or it's going to be the maiden event title for Wuiza. And, of course, you always have to say, if you have to choose in between the two, you have to go for Higgins marginally for the point of him being, probably closer to the end of his career. Certainly in comparison to Wuiza, which certainly will have much more of a chance himself to take more of those titles later on in his career. Right now plays a shot off the black to try and get the cue ball in towards the reds, and play the shot quite nicely, to be fair to him, because he manages to get himself lined up for the red. Try and take it in towards the right middle pocket. Try and get the cue ball lined up for the blue, you would think, as his chance to try and get the white onto the ball colours as well. He indeed deserves to win, even if I love to see Old Guard defending their state as well. That's true, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you can see the positives in whichever way to look at it, especially from the neutral's point of view. I still think that we probably would like to see the match go a bit further, but if it is, technically it still is 2 frames needed there for Wuiza. It is going to be a bit more of that if he is going to play shots like that, because very similar to the approach that Higgins has had on the previous time of asking in the previous frame, and of course doing that from the brown as well. The only difference probably is that Higgins was doing that from the left-hand side of the table and actually managed to get himself onto the red. Not so much of a, luck's perspective. It is going to be for Wuiza to try and find a safety shot right now, as he gets himself a 21 points of a gap to try and run away with it. And of course, from his points, you don't really want to start counting those points, and don't really want to set yourself a task of, I need 70 points or so, because that way you have to be a bit more clinical with the chances there, especially with the one that he's had to his name. He's played the shots on the previous occasion off the black quite nicely, but in the end, he just felt like you had to try and get the cue ball onto the blue and try and do the second time of asking, try and send the cue ball in towards the main pack of reds. Instead, he's tried to do it from the brown, which was always going to be a long shot. And talk about long shots, potentially one that John Higgins got lined up in towards the left corner. Not on this occasion, as I think he was prioritising a safety play, and needs the cue ball to go closer towards the brown for it to be called a successful safety shot. In the end, doesn't seem to be the case. And right now, once again, we have Wuiza trying to go for this red in towards the right middle. Towards the right corner, I mean. And he's got a couple of those available to him if he is to get another break chance, but these are the sort of questions that you have to ask yourself before you come out onto the arena. Am I going to take them? Am I going to try and take my chance right now? Or maybe just play a couple of more safety shots and try and make sure I'm going to guarantee myself a best possible opportunity, which sometimes will come from your opponent mistake, which, as I say, you can afford to do with him being 8-5 up in terms of frames against John Higgins. Now, the old guards won too much already. Time for young guns to win something. Another valid point, as I say, from Peter. And you can understand exactly where he's coming from. But, if young guys want to win it, he has to make sure he takes this red and actually manages to pot it. And he will. Beautiful shot once again. So far, no signs of pressure for the time being. And certainly a sign of a beautiful shot in towards the right corner being played. Under all sorts of pressure there, to make sure he got the cue ball into a zone which didn't really have too much available there from Higgins, but of course he didn't have any control of the red in case he would have jumped out. And the best way to control that red is to actually ensure it's going to end in the pocket, which certainly was the case at that time. And now Wuiza has got a gap of 28 points to his name, and he's going to have the pink sort of in the mix of reds. I wouldn't really say it's going to be underneath them, because the referee that so far hasn't really slowed the game down too much and has actually been spot on with all of those respottings of the pink, taking the majority of the time. As I say, for the way that the approach and the play that the players have taken, I don't really think we've had too many of those shots that had the referee needing to respot the cue ball. But this certainly seems to be a complicated situation for him to try and place pink perfectly down the spine. And has to get himself, of course, composed there, Wuiza, trying to see the next available red that he's going to try and take after taking the black in towards the right corner, you would think. Once again, I mean, if he gets himself underneath the black to an extent, of course, still wants the black to be playable in towards the right corner, he can have a little option of cannoning the cue ball in towards the sort of third highest reds of the pack, to ensure that he's still going to have a couple of options to his name into the left corner. But instead he goes for a safer option, which I have to probably say is the right thing to do. Goes for the screw back on the blue, and he's going to try and send the cue ball in towards the main bunch of reds. Didn't really want to do it from the black. Let's see if it's going to work out. I mean, it did to an extent, but it didn't work out perfectly there for him, because if he hasn't got a planting towards the left corner, his only chance of continuing the break is going to be a difficult red in towards the right middle, which at this stage of the match, as I say, anything is missable. But I mean, if that was the second frame, you still have to say that that is a difficult shot for him to take on, because of the jaws of the middle pockets still not being as forgiving as you might call the corner pockets. And if you catch the front jaw especially, certainly not going to be able to pot the red. And playing this shot sometimes requires you to play with power, and that's the way he had to play it. And he misses the red now. What does John Higgins have as he comes back to the table, or should I say storms back to the table for another chance that goes his way? Well, I mean, realistically, the chance that comes to mind is going to be the red to play along the cushion in towards the right corner. But that's probably going to be as far as he gets there for him. Yeah, needless to say, the younger ones will need to prove their worth. Snooker success is not handed on a silver. Yeah, lovely way to put that. Yeah, Higgins has got a red available in towards the left corner. Has to make sure he gets this one in, though. Because, as I say, with having already a 34 points advantage, any mistake will certainly not be forgiven there for him. No mistake this time around, and it's a brilliant stuff from Higgins. It's a brilliant start there from Higgins as well, because now finds himself 33 points down with 99 on the table. And not ideal position. The red that has to be probably the most concerning him at this stage is going to be the one that I mentioned. Could have been played on the previous occasion for an opening shot. The one along the cushion in towards the right corner. But ultimately, if you take the two reds, which are currently in open play, you've got 6 more of them, which are forming a little pack of, maybe 4 of them to be fair, because I think the top one is going to be possible in towards the right corner. So now try and play the shot to try and get himself lined up along the cushion shot and try and get that one out of the way. But I don't think it would have been the plan for Higgins to be so straight on this one, because he was always going to leave the cue ball, well, dead on the cushion. Now he plays the shot this straight, unless he manages to find some sort of topspin and left-hand spin to try and get cue ball out of captivity of the jaws. And, I mean, inputting the black was nice, but, as I say, I think he needed to be on more of an angle that he finds himself in right now. He managed to roll the red in, though. So, it had the littlest and the thinnest of angles there that you can actually find it on a snooker table. So, the cue ball is not exactly on the cushion, but it's still way too far away from the black for you to call this shot comfortable. But at this stage of the match, especially with him being 3 frames down and 25 points down, nothing is safe and comfortable. And neither is going to be this black now, because it is going to be missed. And the first real obstacle and sort of chance that was difficult there for Higgins to try and go for, he misses out on. And the same red that he was playing for himself is going to be available now to take on towards Wuiza, as he tries to get himself off into the touching distance of winning this title here at the International Championship. 35 points is, of course, the number that he managed to score throughout this frame. And 26 points is the gap, 83 on the table. Of course, not going to need to do too much stuff with those 5 reds that I mentioned previously. We're forming a little pack of theirs closer towards the left-hand corner. And ultimately, I think what Higgins didn't do, of course, it didn't matter realistically for his stage, because if he gives away a mistake, it could be very costly anyway. But what we can't afford to do right now, with him being so close to the ultimate win of his career, is try and get the cue ball into those reds too early, when I'm having 2 more in available play, and has to try and take those first. So get himself sort of 45 points or so ahead of John Higgins until it goes to the last 67 available on the snooker table. You need to be the best to be the best. Well, certainly, and I think from both of the players' point of view, certainly from Wuiza's point of view, he has managed to do that throughout his campaign and got himself into this position now of being basically a frame and a half away from being the title winner. You know, when you go through the likes of Watchalong especially, by the way, you have to say, I mean, what a story could it have been different for his career if he is to become victorious, had he not managed to win at least one of those frames against Trump, where he was 4-0 down. He needed 6 frames to overcome that deficit. As for now, important shot coming up. He's running himself out of available reds, so has to try and send the cue ball in towards the main pack and play the shot absolutely to perfection out there. 43 points now is the gap. And, well, certainly doesn't seem like it's going to get any lower than that for John Higgins, as Wu gets himself on the red and a pink combination. I'll have that one respotted shortly. And, well, the next red should be frame ball out there for Wuiza, because he's now 44 points. And make that 50 with pink up on John Higgins. So, indeed, he'll put him 51 points clear with 51 on the table. So, preferably, it was always going to need one more colour to this one. But with black waiting for it to be potted in towards the left corner, certainly doesn't seem like it's going to be the issue for him. And, well, you talk about you need to be the best. If you want to beat the best, certainly he's managed to do that right now with Wuiza getting the black in. And right now, there is 2 snookers required for John Higgins. I think all of those snooker talk is going to evaporate if Wu manages to take the red in towards the right corner. Gets himself lined up for the black as well. Plays the shot quite nicely. And certainly, it is now another frame over to Wuiza. So he makes that, 4 out of 5 in the second session, and only needs 1 more of the potential remaining 6 to ensure that it is going to be a fairy tale completed and the last chapter written for him in towards him claiming his maiden ranking event title. Try to get himself off into the sort of bold colours, but in the end he's played the shot in a way that I don't think is going to matter at this stage, simply because he potted the cue ball with the black. And let's see if it is going to matter. The referee was asking John Higgins, if you will, but I mean, ultimately he's still come back to the table, so 52 now is the gap in between 2 players. Of course, don't really have to play the shot that way if you're going to be talking about it from Wuiza's perspective, because, you know, you are 52 points ahead. If you pot the black, you make it 59 points with 43 on the table. Instead, of course, you give your opponent 7 foul points and you let him back to the table. So, you know, if you do that earlier, of course, you call that absolutely bang out of order. And it still is a bit weird shot selection for him to go for, clearly trying to entertain the fans. And, well, still don't think he's going to pay the ultimate price for it, because it's 2 reds. He only needs 1 of them to ensure that Higgins will step back and have to settle for another loss in this frame. Once again. And back to Higgins comes the turn. We're placing the red very close towards the pink out there to try and get himself up set up for the right middle. And I mean, Higgins can go and try and send this red towards the left corner, get himself lined up for the black, and try and take it in towards the right corner for himself. I mean, if he plays the shot with power, he's going to be able to get himself a guaranteed position on the black. But ultimately, as I say, that's going to leave the red vulnerable from Wu's point of view. And yeah, he hasn't managed to take it. And is the same red going to be available there for Wall to take in towards the left middle? Does seem to be the case. But of course, if that isn't the case, he certainly has got a red available in towards the green pocket to try and take. And as I say, the way he approaches the shots and the way he goes down to hit them so quickly, I mean, apart from that, a bit of a reckless shot, you don't really see him feeling that pressure just yet. Although he is going to miss the red in towards the green pocket, so maybe it was a bit of nerves with him trying to get over the line. Of course, by the way, I'm saying that if Higgins manages to take this frame, he's going to absolutely turn the match on his head, but he's still 3 snookers away from doing that, or a snooker and a free ball, if he is to do it on the red, away from doing that. And yeah, I mean, if he plays shots like that, it's certainly going to be a very, very short fairy tale from John Higgins' point of view, because he had a nice little situation to get the cue ball onto the top part of the table, send the red onto the lower part of it, and in the end, well, I mean, Wuiza nearly done the same thing of potting the red and potting the cue ball. Of course, it still would have left Higgins requiring not 3 but 4 snookers at that stage, but ultimately he's going to be fine out there. And as he tries to pot the black in towards the left corner, certainly going to be now 9 frames to 5. And I came from Mount Water. Well, Roger sure did, but I mean, there's a mountain to climb for John Higgins if he wants to be the winner of the International Championship. Of course, there are going to be some questions asked about that, but ultimately I just think that he wasn't able to play the game that was required there for him to become the winner of this tournament. And ultimately, so far, Yize has played exactly that, with him having now a 9 to 5 frame advantage to himself. So once again, for the first time, we're actually going to see, well, for the second time realistically, since that frame number 12, we're going to see that 4 frame gap in his favour. And only 1 frame away, of course. It has never been at this stage. He was the closest that he got was against Neil Robertson, where he was 8-7 that he was trailing by. So technically 2 frames away from making that one the title that he was seeking for. Of course, would have been extra special for him to make it on the first time of asking, but didn't quite pay off at that stage. By the way, thank you very much for 800 people watching. Feel free to hit the like on the stream and subscribe to the channel if you are interested in this sort of content. We will have Champion of Champions starting on Tuesday with Karen Wilson against Jack Lisowski on the last 16 of a stage. Also, we know all of the groups and the way they're going to be played. And also, you know, Riyadh season featuring Ronnie O'Sullivan, Giles Dington, Judge John, Sean Murphy, Neil Robertson, Mark Selby, all the best players that you can actually think of. And before that, of course, and after it, he's going to have a Triple Crown event, UK Championship. Certainly the biggest tournament that we've had so far in this season. Once again, he's just going to have to be very careful in terms of if you're going to have the cue ball to be played in towards the bunch of reds from the opening shot there from Wuiza's point of view, it has to make sure that he just forces Higgins into that extra error. And I think the blueprint is there from Wuiza's point of view, because he's managed to take this match really well. And if you take and break it in stages for him, majority of the times in the second session that he's managed to get himself on the break came from mistakes there from John Higgins' point of view. And therefore, you have to realize that Wuiza has to be patient now, because especially in the opening frame, because there's always going to be chances which are 50-50 there for himself. And also, I just think in the end, you're going to have Higgins trying to go for these 50-50 reds himself, and therefore the chance is going to be there for Wuiza. But for now, it's a break-off shot, certainly the most important one that he's going to have in his career just to this point. You know, all the matches that he's played in the World Championship will mean absolutely nothing in comparison to this for him, because it's the frame now that can be the defining moment of his career for this point in his life. And what a beautiful break-off shot this is. Gets the cue ball lined up perfectly on towards the ball cushion. And right now I'm going to have the cue ball to be sent down. And, well, has to line himself up for the black in towards the left corner. If he is to take the attacking approach, which I said was going to be the way to go for John Higgins. But right now as it stands, I think he'll be looking at the red in towards the left corner as the main option there for himself. But of course, if he takes that red, he's very unlikely to go for a safety shot, apart from it being a little cross double and trying to send the cue ball onto the top part of the area. Doesn't seem to be that way, but what a beautiful shot that is from John Higgins. I mean, certainly a response to a couple of long shots from Wuiza previously in the match. And what a way to get him started for the 6th frame pursuit. Let's see how far he's actually going to make it this time around, because still yet to make a sort of frame ending break in the 2nd session, which we have seen on a couple of occasions the previous one, with him averaging sort of 60 points or so scored, and of course massively improved by the fact that he's made a century break in the 1st session with a break of 101 points. Right now gets himself lined up for a couple of easy reds to try and take with the black, and has to try and accelerate himself off into the distance and try and ensure that he's going to have a couple of more frames at least for his name to try and be played. And well, I mean, he's gone for the shot which was there for him, but once again going to run himself a bit of an awkward position on the cue ball, in terms of he's trying to cannon the cue ball in towards the reds, but ultimately off the black. And right now he has to go for a difficult shot there in towards the left corner, try and send the cue ball on towards the top part of the table. And now 17 points, very much on the cards there for him, for a potential frame win number 6. But until then, he has to make sure that the red is going to be dropped in, and that's not going to be the case. So what a massive point this could be now, and the first real chance for Yize to be the winner of the International Championship. Right now, how is he going to take this chance? What's the approach is going to be? We're going to find out very soon right now, because he's got, well, I mean, of the sort of 12 reds that he's got available on his name, I think 11 of them are in perfect position. And 2 of those, of course, are very much covering the left middle and left corner pocket. Now has to start off with the rest shot, a little bit of traction of the cue ball, try and send it in towards the main part of the table and get himself lined up for either pink or black to be taken in towards the right corner for him. But in the end, I mean, he's playing the shot in a bit of a bizarre fashion and underplayed for the ball colours, so has to realise if he's going to be on the blue in towards the right middle. And I think that's not going to be the case out there. So good news is, of course, he's got that red which I mentioned over the left corner pocket. And yeah, didn't manage to play a perfect shot off the cue ball. And right now, I mean, I think he can just about get through to that red in towards the left corner if he goes for the blue right now in towards the right middle and play the shot nicely, to be fair. So gets himself lined up for a couple of easy shots to take. The red in towards the left middle, play through the shot and try and get himself lined up on the black in towards the right corner to go just 2 points short there of John Higgins' tally in this frame as it stands. And what a performance it has been so far, you have to say. Absolutely flawless. Very few mistakes made in this match and in the campaign in general. Probably the biggest ones that you have to say are sort of against John Higgins were the ones that have cost him frames number 8 and 9. You felt at that time that was absolutely massive there for him. But ever since, John Higgins only managed to take one of the frames, and Wuiza managed to take 4 at the same time of asking, gets himself on the blue, and the right side of it, once again, to try and take it in towards the middle. A little bit of too much of the angle now that he'll have to himself. So wants to try and slow the cue ball down, unless he wants to try and maybe cannon it in towards the sort of black ball cushion and have it bounce back onto the top part of the table. Going to find out the answer very soon. And play the blue with a little power. So obviously trying to make sure the cue ball is going to be in amongst the reds. But as I say, he knows better than I do. But I don't think he's got that red available in towards the left corner. I think the camera still has to change the approach now. But I mean, he has got the red in towards the right corner. But with the way he has to play that red, it's not an easy cut, by the way, but he has to play with a rest shot, and also he has to play that one with power to make sure that he's going to be on the pink or blue to try and take in towards either left or right middle. John Higgins GG. Well, for the time being, it looks like it, but as I say, anything is missable, especially if you talk about red like that, and it is going to be missable. And Wuiza, I was surprised with that short selection, but ultimately I still would have probably backed him just about to drop that red in. Not this time around, and back to the table comes John Higgins, being only 4 points down, and it's the first real chance not taken there. Understandably so, you're going to have pressure all over you. when you try and play, especially shots like that, which is why you want to keep it as straightforward as possible there for yourself. And Higgins is going to try and play that red in towards the left middle, get himself accelerated, and have the blue available to himself in towards the right middle. I mean, once again, you just have to say, with the way Higgins is taking these shots, I mean, he nearly run himself out of a perfect position on the blue and got the cue ball in behind the red. And I mean, he just doesn't seem to have anywhere near as much control as he had for the majority of the tournament. It could be fatigue. It could be him playing his best snooker on the previous occasion. But once again, I mean, he's played 2 shots right now and he nearly run himself out of position twice already. For now, he's going to have that red over the left middle, which is going to be taken out of the game, and has to try and make sure that he's not going to be a repeatable case of him running a bit short on those colours, and has to send the cue ball the long way around. Of course, this one is better in terms of he's going to be nicely on the blue, but he's still going to be the wrong side of it. 3 shots and 3 minor errors out there, but you know, he had 2 easy reds to try and get himself out of that situation. Right now he doesn't have any of those and has to power the cue ball through and around the ball cushion. Play the shot nicely, to be fair, if the cue ball manages to go over the blue spot and make the referee's job a bit more difficult in terms of just having to place the blue on towards the pink spot this time around. And I think Higgins managed to play that shot to an absolute perfection. Still, he's going to require an extension on the cue and potentially a rest to be taken, with him having to reach so far for the cue ball. But in the circumstances that he had previously, probably is going to be the right way for him to approach this shot. There are going to be 10 Chinese players in top 16 5-year time. Or if they play the way that Xiao Xington, Si Xiaowei and sort of Ding Zhuowei play, I'm certainly here for it, because it's certainly going to be entertainment for the snooker and for the fans in general. Right now it's a shot nicely taken there by Higgins. Gets himself lined up for the pink in towards the left middle. Has to hammer the way off the cue ball past at least a cushion there, maybe even 2 of those if he wants to use the black ball cushion to his advantage. And taken off into the pink nicely. Well, I mean, he needed 1 cushion at that stage, but he's going to have to go for a red in towards the right middle, which was similar to the one that Wuiza has missed in the previous frame. Of course, still went on to win that encounter and set himself up with a nice little 9-5 of a gap. This time it's not going to be missed there by John Higgins, so nicely taken. And gets himself lined up on the blue, which is going to stay on the pink spot for a couple of more shots for the simple reason of, you know, the pink spot is taken by the blue and the blue spot is taken by the pink. As confusing as that might sound. And once again, nice little shot there, taken well by Higgins. Gets himself 21 points clear. And ultimately he's going to try and extend that advantage with having 75 points on the table as it stands. Try and send the cue ball in towards the pink to try and play that one in towards the left middle. Maybe he's actually going to stay on the blue for the time being, because he got himself with an awkward angle on the pink. So cannon the way off the cue ball in towards the red, because, I mean, he's got 4 reds available there to his name. He's got 1 more on the left-hand cushion, which I don't think he's going to need for the time being. But right now he has to play a shot either for the right middle, which is going to be a bit of a difficult cut there for him, or the one into the right corner. And, I mean, he's played the shot nicely, to be fair, because it just gives him enough of a room to try and get the cue ball on towards the pink and be the right side of it. Of course, if he is to run himself out of position once again, he'll have the ball colours, assuming that he's going to overplay the cue ball and not underplay it. But even in that case, he probably would have had the blue to take in towards the left corner anyway. Now approaching the frame ball line and at least guaranteeing himself to survive for 1 more frame and take it to a respective scoreline of potentially, of course, 10 frames to 6 if Yize is to win the next one. 59 points on the table, 34 is the advantage. So 2 more reds taken away from the game with 2 more expensive colours. And that's going to be it there for this frame in John Higgins' favour. The first red taken away nicely, and still, I mean, being in control of the cue ball is always going to be a bonus there for yourself. And he certainly managed to do that on a couple of those occasions. Now, having a look to see if he's going to be able to sort of avoid the cannon on those 2 reds and just play for 1 of them, which is all that he will need, apart from the colour after it. And in the end, it didn't feel like that was the case. And is he going to have one in towards the left corner? Yes, he will. Play the shot really nicely, and to be fair, judge the power well. And right now, he's 41 points clear with 51 on the table. So roll the red in towards the left corner, and you're going to get yourself lined up for the pink to try and take it in towards the right middle, which is going to be the frame ball to ensure that it is going to be at least 2 frames that John Higgins is going to take in this session. And right now, yeah, pots the pink in nicely, so gets himself lined up for a shot of the red in towards the right corner. I mean, I haven't seen too many of the 50 plus breaks from John Higgins, so that certainly will be a bonus there for him. As it's 2 snookers required for Wuiza for the time being. It'll be a lot more than that if he manages to pot the red, and certainly does. So, a guaranteed there of 16 frames for us to witness as fans. And John Higgins will survive for at least 1 more frame there. Not for 1 more shot though, because he'll miss the black, and still don't think that Wuiza will come back to the table with it being 49 points advantage. And it is going to be a frame taken there by John Higgins. Not perfect circumstances there for him, but I'd probably say at this stage of the match, it ain't going to matter too much there for him. And he survives for at least 1 more encounter there with Wuiza. And has to make sure that he wins a couple of more frames out there to set up. An 8-9 deficit is not going to be so bad of a result there, of course, for him. And, of course, he's going to only put him 1 frame away from making the decider. And therefore, he's actually going to be in his favour at that stage, of course, from coming back from a 5-9 deficit to try and set up a 10-9 win, which is going to be the only sort of possible case scenario as it stands for Higgins to be victorious and produce certainly one of the best comebacks of the 34 ranking event titles, if you count this one, which so far does seem to be like a big stretch if you don't count that one in. Yize is going to go for a bathroom break, so clearly either to try and get himself count down, maybe like one of the players was saying that, you know, sometimes you just need to wash your hands and say to yourself, it's 1 more frame that I need, and I'm going to be over the line if I manage to put up another break of 70 or so points. John Higgins stays in his chair. He certainly won't be feeling any sort of pressure right now because he's the man behind and trying to chase Wuiza right now. Referee will re-establish the pink back on its original spot, and this time around, of course, it is going to be John Higgins to break off. He's going to be able to get himself off to a better start than what we've seen in frame number 13, I think it was. No, it was 14, where he has gone 5-9 down, with leaving a red available off the break-off for Wuiza to try and take, who, by the way, has just gone back to the arena. So it's a second chance they're taking. He's going to have quite a few of those to get himself over the line. Of course, the last frame that you have to win is always the most difficult for the players, but ultimately, you still feel like it is going to be a mighty challenge for John Higgins to try and overcome the massive gap of 4 frames and a scoreline of 5 frames to 9. He's managed to do sort of 20% of the job if he is to count him winning the entire match out there. And now the referee comes to the table, and it is going to be John Higgins to break off and to get himself hopefully on the score sheet for 1 more time there. And of course, from his point of view, you have to be hoping to receive 1 more chance there of your opposition player and try and get yourself on the cards for a win of this title, which still very much is going to be against him in terms of the odds. And I mean, the odds are going to stay against him if he's going to have a break-off shot like that. And if he is to win it, of course, you'll have to make that one on the 18 frame once again. And leaves the red on for Wuiza to try and take in towards the right corner. This is going to be an early chance for him. Ideally, something that John Higgins didn't want to present to him. And beautifully taken in terms of getting the red. Going to run himself a bit awkward on the black, though. But ultimately, I mean, it's whichever way you look at it, it's going to have a difficult shot of the black in towards the right corner. But if he makes this one stick, he's going to be able to go for trying to send the cue ball in towards the majority of those reds and try and have a couple of those line up for himself and manage to get the black in and play the cannon in towards the reds perfectly. Playing that one with little power, which wasn't really something that I expected to see from him. But in the end, got himself onto 1 more red, which is going to be enough there for him at this stage. Get himself on towards the black and try and couple more to his name after this one. And as it stands, I think I can see 4 reds being available there for him. So, of course, the 2 of the ones that he already managed to pot, and 2 more off into left and right corner, respectively. Be careful, won't match anyone yet. It is not, but those types of chances, if you're going to get those from John Higgins, you may as well actually buy a lottery ticket, because it doesn't happen often. Most players will tell you, especially in the finals. He made 58 ranking event finals, if you count this one, and he's managed to take 33 titles. Right now, it's a massive shot for Wuiza, because he'll try and get the cue ball in towards the reds. And what a perfect shot this is. This is an absolute outstanding shot there for him. Wow, what an amazing bit of cueing that was, to get the cue ball in towards the reds and get himself set up for a shot of the black in towards the left corner. And right now, as it stands, just getting himself on towards the red to try and get himself with a setup in towards the right corner. Of course, 3 reds, 3 blacks as it stands. And rolls the 4th one in towards the right corner. Lovely little shot for himself. So he can try and go 32 points clear as it stands with this black. Then try and get the cue ball on towards the left-hand cushion and try and get it over the pink. Have himself set up a red in towards the right corner. Which is good. Well, I'm not sure if you mean good or God. He certainly is going to be one of the fan favourites if he is to win this tournament. But he's still about 50 points or so away from doing that. It's a lovely little shot on the black. He wants the cue ball to run a bit further than that. But in the end, with no real concern in his eyes. Still, as I say, still very much composed. And doesn't show a lot of emotion so far. And in fact, if you probably have to think about it, John Higgins has shown more of emotion than Wuiza there, with the majority of them just being disappointment, with him running himself out of position or just missing shots that you wouldn't really expect John Higgins to miss out there. So 1 more blue to be taken in towards the left middle and get himself lined up on the red to try and take in towards the left corner if that is available. And he tried to go for the approach, which has actually allowed him to take the red into available play. So he's going to try and take this one in towards the left corner. Get yourself lined up for the black in towards the right corner instead. And if he can get through to that red in towards the right corner, it's actually going to make his work a lot easier. And he can. Nice little bonus, which probably was well deserved after the shot that he's played previously. Gets himself lined up on the black to try and take in towards the right corner. Playing the shot really well now. Gets himself a break of 46 points, which of course is going to matter massively now at this stage. And haven't got to that stage yet, you would think, but you know, if you were in his head, you would have to start thinking about, I'm only sort of 5-6 spots away from making history for myself. He's still going to have to make those, quite a complicated ones, because even though he's got himself lined up perfectly on the black, don't really think he's got any of those reds available to his name. So maybe a little cannon in towards the reds from underneath, and have one of them available in towards the left middle. Of course, still can develop a few more off into the left corner, right middle or right corner. If you don't take into account the yellow and the green pocket. And play the shot nicely of cannoning the cue ball in towards one of the remote reds. And by doing that, he's freed himself up a path to take the red in towards the left corner. But also he's managed to bring 1 more of those in towards the right middle to be played on the next couple of shots. And now 55 points. Is the gap, will be 62 if the black disappears off into the left corner and tries to get himself onto the top part of the table now to try and take this red off into the right corner, or indeed in towards the left or right middle pocket. In the end, he'll go for the left middle to be taken with this red into. And right now, just getting closer and closer. Of course, the next couple of reds surely going to get him over the line, with it being 75 points on the table. The blue will take him to 68 points, so of course the next red will be match ball there for Wuiza. And the first chance wasn't taken, the second one seems to be a lot better. Let's see, he needs 1 more good shot now to get himself lined up for the red. And he clearly had one available in towards the right middle, so everything was planned for this approach. And let's see how the execution is going to be there for him. Takes the red in towards the right middle on. Is he going to make it? Yes, he will. So from the first time of asking, he does manage to get himself over the line, barring Snookers. Because to make it 3 snookers required for John Higgins, he has to take the black in towards the right corner. And certainly, he's going to show a lot of emotion now. And therefore, he deserves it. I mean, what a shot and what a performance. A little bit of a fist bump, but boy, does he deserve that. What a performance. What a campaign. What a tournament. What a year for Wuiza. You know, 2024 wasn't really his lucky year in terms of the calendar or the Home Nation series, but the story is going to be written now in Nanjing for Wuiza because it is certainly going to be his first ranking event title. He was close. He had a gap of 9 frames to 5, and in the end, he couldn't make it the first time, but it ain't going to matter one bit. And what is going to matter is, of course, making a century break to finish off on an absolute bang there out there. Johnny Watt certainly says Wu has won. I mean, he has, but what a performance. You have to say thank you very much to John Higgins for the performance in this tournament that he managed to put up. And he's probably done the best that he could today. As I say, the better player has won. And ultimately, you just have to give a massive shout out to Wuiza from his performance. But also, John Higgins managed to play his part. And what a part it has been for Wuiza manages to take the black for a century break. And also, by the way, I mean, don't forget the fact that he manages to, if he does manage to go on and make a total clearance, he will make a 4th century in the final. And, of course, his 1st century in the final. And the 4th one in total. And in the end, not going to be a total clearance, but it is going to be a brilliant win out there. And it is going to be Wuiza on top of John Higgins. So, a break of 108 points to finish off a wonderful encounter with John Higgins and Wuiza. Right now, it is an absolute scenes out there in China. You can see the crowd enjoying this one. You can see it means the world to Wuiza. And as he gives 2 brilliant fist bumps to the crowd, he's certainly going to be enjoying this one for a long, long time. And after the maiden campaign win for Jack Lisowski in all sorts of drama against Watchalong, we have got another brand new winner of the ranking event title. And it is the man from China, the Wu man, the world number 22, which ain't going to be there for longer because now he's going to have a massive jump up the rankings and receive 175,000 worth of prize money and ranking points to his name. And boy, does he deserve that. What a performance. What a story, of course, it has been for him, beating Zhang Anda, overcoming a massive 4-0 deficit against Watchalong. And, of course, have to mention the whitewash against Barry Hawkins, the win against world champion, the home crowd favourite, you could argue, Zhao Xington. And right now, to do it in style against John Higgins and finish off with the century break, have 4 of those in the entire match. And what a story it has been for him. And certainly commiserations to John Higgins. As I say, he has managed to play his part in this final. And ultimately, thank you very much for every one of you has joined in. We're going to do a little bit of an overview of the second session. But ultimately, you have to say, no matter what you analyse, the better player has won. And it has been Wuiza's match to lose ever since the starting point of it, when he managed to take that wonderful clearance of 86 points to get himself a 1-0 of a gap. Managed to extend that one to 2-0. And apart from, realistically, I mean, the 3rd frame where Higgins managed to take a frame away from him and got it down to a single frame of a deficit, it has been a domination of a performance for Wuiza. And, of course, ever since the 3rd frame, there wasn't a point in the match where Higgins was closer than being away by 2 frames or more out there. He's managed to play his part. Well, certainly, Andy. And I still think that you'll be able to come back stronger into, you never know, Champion of Champions is going to be there for him. Riyadh season, of course, is going to feature in that one as well. And don't forget the Triple Crown UK Championship, which is going to be there waiting for him as well. But ultimately, if you have to talk about the second session, I think it was very important for Wuiza to try and win the opening frame, which would have been the frame number 10. And the fact that he managed to take it a level above that and sort of win 3 frames of the bounce, all of them in a very similar fashion. I mean, certainly have to say hats off to him. And, you know, a lot of people talked about pressure. I have seen absolutely no signs of pressure in the second session for him. There have been a couple of misses, but I don't think it was anything to do with pressure because in the end, when it was a 5-8 of a gap for him to try and take it into 5-9 and 6-10 category, he managed to take those breaks from a single invitation, and he managed a century break with a not quite a total clearance, but still a wonderful clearance in the last frame. So if you're going to talk about pressure, make sure you're going to keep Wuiza out of that sentence. And I mean, he's going to join the club of Zhao Xington out there, because I still very much think that the world champion from China was sort of immune to any sort of pressure. And now, can Wuiza try and take it the next level? When you have the first title, you're always going to be hungry for more. And he's certainly going to be one of the players to look for in the upcoming tournaments. He's going to have a well-deserved rest, because he's not going to be featuring the Champion of Champions or the Riyadh season. But be sure that you're going to be following him throughout the campaign of the UK Championship, because I still think he's got a couple of more surprises left in him. Or is it going to be another player that we haven't seen yet? And as I say, apart from Sean Murphy, we've had all sorts of players making the finals, and every single one of those times it has been a different player. Of course, Sean didn't manage to take the second final as a win. And right now we've had, if you count the Shanghai Masters, we had Karen Wilson, Neil Robertson, Xiao Godon, we've had Mark Allen, we've had Sean Murphy, we've had Mark Williams, we've had Jack Lisowski, and now we've had Wuiza as winners of the ranking event titles. Every single tournament has seen a different winner, and let's see if that tendency is going to continue. 4 Champion of Champions, if you sort of count the non-ranking and invitational events, but certainly in towards the UK Championship, the first Triple Crown event is finally going to design for the likes of Zhao Xington, Judd Trump, Ronnie O'Sullivan, Karen Wilson, to try and take the crown and spotlight away from the other players. And ultimately, you'll have to probably end on this one. Brilliant performance from Yize's point of view. Commiserations once again to John Higgins. He's played his part. Ultimately, it was too much of a task for him to handle, and he certainly will be proud of his campaign up to this point, even though he probably won't really say that today, but that's normal after such a significant loss. And you know, when you make your 58th ranking event final, you want to make sure you make it and convert it into a 34th title. Not to be, but certainly plenty of those to come for Yize in his future career. Now then, that's going to be a wrap, and thank you very much for everyone tuned in. Feel free to tune in towards the Champion of Champions. As I say, we still have got plenty of snooker to follow in November. Riyadh season, UK Championship, all to follow up until the end of 2025 as the calendar year. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, congratulations to Wuiza and his brilliant performance. And now I'll speak to you in the match of Karen Wilson against Jack Lisowski. I'm pretty sure that's going to be on Tuesday. And until then, see you later. And thank you again for everyone that tuned into the stream. Take care.